Hi everyone. I've been building a lot of random crap recently, and it kind of gave me like a moment of reflection. So here's a question for you. Do you start more projects than you can finish? I mean, it's quite a vague question, and the answer is probably yes for like everyone watching, but I just think it's interesting because like I get quite a few people, asking for help with learning Blender because we're a very Blender-centric channel. And one of the things that just keeps popping up is people either having this decision paralysis of not knowing what to make or wanting to make too many things, or trying and failing to start and complete a project. I've always had and maintained like a singular perspective on this, which is maybe a bit different from other people. I've always said that you shouldn't be afraid or ashamed of starting many projects, especially early on in your learning process, because the more projects you start, the more things, the more tools, the more ideas you're going to bump into early on. And realistically, that's going to expose you to new knowledge at a faster pace than you would have done if you would just try to stick with just one idea or one project right from the very beginning. Now, obviously, there are a lot of caveats in that idea because learning to finish a project is quite an important skill. And we've spoken about this before, and a lot of that is just, general common sense. So here's a different question. For those of you that spend your lives on YouTube, welcome to the club. Have you ever been annoyed because a YouTuber you like has started making a different type of content? Because I know I have. I mean, I know I've been annoyed at other YouTubers, but I have also started doing other types of content randomly in the past. But it would just be interesting to know how you felt about that, or are you kind of more relaxed in understanding the creative attitudes of the different creators you follow? It's really interesting in this community, the Blender community, because Blender has its web expanding into like pretty much any industry now. This is why its community is so strong and vibrant and large and very mutually beneficial between creative and technical skill sets, although we should probably be careful in kind of identifying those as separate things. But basically, Blender is a very diverse community, and this is something I spoke about with Grant Abbott on a recent podcast on my second channel. That was a very good conversation, by the way, I recommend it. But anyway, where am I going with this? In the Blender community, there are a lot of YouTube creators making content, and to different degrees, we stick to different formulas or different levels of predictability with the content. The main reason for this difference is that people are trying to get different things out of YouTube. And though from the perspective of a viewer, and I know I'm guilty of this, when you watch someone else's content, this doesn't even just have to be related to YouTube. We see things through a singular lens, and that singular lens is your perspective as a pre-existing viewer. When someone randomly changes their content type, such as Tom or CG Matter randomly deciding one day that he wanted to walk across America, rebranding the entire channel, going on a radio show talking about it, things can be a bit confusing from the limited lens of a singular viewer. But of course, as a creator, and you as yourself, because you'll know this from your own life, very rarely, or never, I suppose, are things really just one motive. Like, things don't just happen for one particular reason, even if the reasons aren't always obvious. The Blender community is interesting because it allows people that have different levels of this chaotic curiosity to explore different skill sets, to develop a following and an audience, and effectively build a life around that. One of the challenges in making content is knowing when to let that creative part of your mind fly and when to try and restrict it for the sake of being more predictable and providing a more useful service to people in the way of regular content. This is, to me, one of the most interesting parts of being a creator in this community, because I am constantly trying to experiment with new things and constantly feeling disappointed in myself that I'm not serving people as best as I can. And it feels kind of weird saying that because simultaneously, almost in like a superposition, I always try and maintain the thought that the content I make primarily for myself, but this mind is in conflict with this provide a predictable service policy that I have running around in my mind. Ultimately, the conflict of these two minds creates a friction that is quite anxiety-inducing. I imagine a lot of you out there feel this maybe in a different way. For example, there might be lots of you that really want to keep exploring personal projects, but maybe you have real-life work pressures, financial pressures, bills, etc., maybe other responsibilities in your life that give you this angst that makes you feel maybe a kind of dread-like anxiety whenever you try exploring something that is not directly beneficial to your survival, I suppose, or to maintaining the stability of your life. Recently, on another podcast episode on the second channel, I kind of opened up a bit because if you've been following me for a while, and sorry to keep bringing this up, medical stuff happened, whatever, I was feeling a bit out of whack for a while and not really at my best state mentally. Like, I wasn't primed to make use of my creative potential or my productivity potential, should we say. And when coming out of that issue, there are still some lingering elements, but when getting better, generally, I expected that my productivity would increase, that I would pick up more tasks that I wasn't able to do before, and that I would get some satisfaction in knowing that now I was actually able to explore more of my potential. What's actually happened is a little bit different, and I feel like there's a lesson in here somewhere for those of you that do struggle with this kind of like two-mind angst thing going on. Coming out of the medical phase, I kind of got more emotional sensitivities back, which means that my reactions to things were a bit different. In doing so, I was able to better kind of self-reflect and look at my attitude towards work. And I discovered that I was finding some types of work more difficult to do than I expected. These were relatively simple tasks, like doing research for the community roundup videos. On the surface, they're very basic. You're just watching a video, making notes, looking through different people's projects. Some of that's really cool stuff. Like in theory, I should be really interested in it. But I think what happened was, as I was kind of getting more of my mind back, this desire to explore different ideas kind of flourished, I suppose. And suddenly all of the regular work kind of became much more boring and small by comparison. And again, I felt kind of a bit ashamed about this because it's like, well, I was expecting to become more productive, to pick up the slack and provide people with more of a service. But, over time, I've kind of realized that fighting off that creative desire is not healthy. Ultimately, that creative desire is why I'm here in the first place. And I know there are a lot of you out there that feel the same way about this, whether it's just for pure curiosity or whether as a coping mechanism, your desire to create is a necessity and not an option. If you don't explore it, you will basically shrivel and die mentally. The desire is there for a reason, and if you suppress it, you're just going to make yourself feel awful. And I do find that when I try and suppress that and just stick to like a regular flow of content or something predictable work-wise, everything just feels more kind of awful. So what I'm noticing now is that the benefit I can provide for people, for this community, for all the people that are yet to stumble on my work and content, my strength really does lie in just making random crap. It is satisfying for me, and ultimately the more I let myself explore it, the more new stuff gets made for people. Now, this is sometimes disappointing, and I understand this, because when you're exploring new ideas all the time, and your mind is moving between these new places, you leave old things behind. For example, I've done many projects for the Blender sphere that I know people are disappointed I haven't gone back and updated. I know there are lots of types of videos that people really want to see, but I just haven't been able to maintain the interest in making them. So let me have like a little look through a list of some things. Okay, so obviously we have the Easy BPY module because I wanted to simplify the Blender Python API and give myself a way to rapidly prototype Python scripts with Blender. Okay, that's publicly available. There are people waiting for me to make some changes on it, and some patrons in the past that gave me some money because, they like the project. Okay, people are expecting updates on that. It's a free project, so, time investment measuring, whatever. Then we got the Blendstream website, which I made with Joshua Kanauba. I joked with him about not using his last name because, no one says it right, but whatever. Okay, really cool website idea. It's like a Netflix for Blender creators. We're really slacking on the review process. Why? Because again, it's unpaid work. Not that that even matters, because as we're going to find, as soon as you apply an extra professional pressure, like monetary income, interest is lost in the project. That's like another really weird kind of aspect about creative chaos. So Easy BPY and Blendstream, really cool projects, quite impressive, right? Well, they're suffering because of this, desire to keep moving. Biogen version 10. Tried several times to start making version 10, lost interest, but to be fair, it wasn't entirely my fault because the medical stuff kept coming back, and then the second time it was Blendstream. It kind of feels like when you really want to work on projects, you get in a mood to do it, but then if something interrupts that mood, you get distracted by another project, then you have to wait again for another unspecified time to become interested in the project again. The generators lab for Biogen still needs work. I've done a lot of work on unifying a standard for voxel quality in Blender with geometry nodes. I completely forgot about that. It's somewhere in my computer. I probably shouldn't lose that because it's some pretty important work, I think. I've got random files laying around everywhere. Modular workspaces, we did do an update for that recently, woohoo! But you can thank Dennis, DinoSire, for that. That was a unique case where we did come up with a good update because someone else helped me with it. That was voluntary, I didn't pay them. Holt tools. Do you know I keep forgetting about Holt tools, but it's so useful. Smouse. Is that how you say your name? Smouse? Smouse. Kind of reminded me about it recently because apparently they've been using it to kind of set defaults in materials and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I need to do more stuff on that. I've got a big list. When will I be interested enough to work on it again? I don't know. Modular metals. Okay, cool procedural stuff. Recently, I've been doing more experiments with semi-procedural work, so I kind of want to move over to a more semi-procedural workflow. Modular metals still cool, one of my highest priced products. I was working on an update for it. When will it be done? I don't know. Procedural patterns, a collection of procedural node groups to help you build up your own materials. It wasn't that long ago that we did an update, but then again, my sense of time folds. Again, maybe something ADD related, but it's something I should come back to. When will I be interested again? I don't know. Ambient grunge. I really like this one, but again, I was working on an update for it. It was to come out at the same time as the next version of Bigen because it made use of geometry nodes to create physical dirt buildup effects. But again, really dangerous idea, planning an update based on another update when we don't even know when we're going to be interested in either of the projects. So those files are sitting somewhere. When will I be interested again? I don't know. Procedural Moss, a collaboration project with Just 3D Things, sitting on Blender Market. I don't know if we'll ever come back to that one. It seems like something that could be packaged into Bigen. So yeah, rigged based characters. Forgot I did that, to be honest. They're not that very high quality. They were just like character models I was using for scale. They are rigged. Maybe I'll add to it again in the future. Who knows? My free startup defaults and theme, the free node group tools, and then just a countless other like free resource packages and some very small priced resource packages. Basically, the point I'm trying to get is there are all these things, and the more things you make, the more people you disappoint, because there are people that love these packages or very specific packages. And now what it means is there are dozens of different directions or lenses, I suppose, that people are viewing your content from. Someone watching your videos may be coming from Modular Metals and go, oh wow, I really love this Modular Metals guy. I wish he would make another update for it. In letting yourself explore this creative potential and develop different tools and products, you are maximizing the pool for your potential angst, I would say. And again, I imagine this is something that a fair number of other people can relate to, but especially other creators. You know, this is putting aside just the regular YouTube viewers that just like the videos and don't care about any of the products or tools. There's also the really interesting psychological quirk that, again, we've spoken about in a previous discussion video, where if you tell someone you're going to do something, you are less likely to actually do it. It might also be developing a skill, like if you tell someone you're going to learn a language, chances are you're not actually going to go through with learning it. The reasoning is quite simple. At the beginning of doing something, you're in quite a tenuous phase. You have your daily routine, right? And when you start doing something, it's easy to overcommit, not realizing that you need to have this discussion about commitment with the rest of your entire daily routine. So it's easy to fall back into your routine. But anyway, when you're starting to do something, it's easy to give up, and people want validation. Like, yes, this is a good thing to do. Yes, you should diverge from your routine and learn this skill or do this project. The fastest way people get validation is by telling their friends and or family. And of course, because your friends and family are supportive, they'll go, oh wow, that's really cool. Yes, well done you. But the act of getting that validation tells your subconscious that you have achieved something already when you have actually achieved nothing at all. And because you feel like you've already achieved something, you can take a break. And that taking a break is you relaxing back into your routine and giving up. So us as creators, we make this mistake all the time, even if we're aware of it, because it kind of adds to the narrative of videos sometimes as well. Like I'll talk about products that I have been working on in a video saying, hey, I've been working on this product, even if it never gets made. Me, Curtis, at the time of making that video, really wanted it to get made, but because I don't know where I'm going to be in between these two minds in the future, or even what this mind's going to be interested in, I don't know if it'll actually end up getting published. I've done this quite a lot. I know a lot of other Blender YouTubers have done this. We'll say we're going to do something and then we'll never do it. And we just keep falling into the same trap. Do you remember I was telling you, okay, well, like a couple of people will remember this. I was making a product called Afterglow because I really love emissive lighting in cycles. Like there's so much you can do with it. I was going to do a product all about that, how to use emissive light in like the most complex ways you can think of. And I did like tutorials as I was kind of exploring this potential, like painting with a light and light nodes and all this other weird stuff you can do. But I couldn't conceptually find the structure for the product. But I don't even know if that necessarily matters, because this is where we get onto like, if you try things and fail to meet your expectations, you've still learned something. Ben and I have decided that we've felt more comfortable recently with the term R&D artist or R&D developer. This is kind of like coming to terms with this two-mind thing, where it's not necessarily my job to create a finished product, even though I like doing that. It's my job to learn what the potential of technology is. And that, of course, generally involves running around trying lots of different things, testing the waters and showing people, hey, this is possible with this tool, this is possible with this tool. You can take that information and use it for your own work. This is effectively where we do our best work. We thrive in testing the waters and seeing what's possible. So even if I start working on a product and it doesn't get completed, even if that's disappointing for me and for other people, we've still made a net positive contribution to the community in some way by sharing techniques, seeing what was viable, etc. I would like to go back and actually make these products. I feel like, to some degree it would be an interesting exercise, maybe some form of therapy, to see the old projects through a new lens, because I've been thinking about this, and using that new lens as a way to bring them to the future. When you look at old projects sometimes, again, maybe something you can relate with, they kind of feel less interesting. And something about that makes you not want to go back to them. Like they're in the past. We've already explored that. There's no curiosity there anymore. But I feel like kind of similar to relationships maybe. Excitement isn't something that's given to you necessarily. It's something that you put the effort in to find. And I feel like maybe seeing the old projects from that perspective might be more healthy. We shouldn't see old projects as old projects, explored territory. We should find new ways to approach them, new ways to attack them to make them feel new, maybe by combining them with new techniques, because there's always something new to try with Blender. It doesn't even have to be Blender, like anything else you're a creator for. There is also the aspect that I was never supposed to be a Blender YouTuber, supposed to in quotes, right? Life takes you in different directions. No one has a plan for their life from the day they're born, right? I mean, like internally. Someone else might have a plan for you, but that's like a whole other thing. But you learn, you discover your path, you go with the flow of the world, and it's changing constantly as you're growing up. I was never supposed to be a Blender YouTuber. It's just what I kind of fell into. If you remember the earliest videos, they were actually Unity and Blender videos, and I tried to keep it that way for a while. I remember even doing like a volumetric lighting one which explained both Unity and Blender, but then it became immediately apparent that Blender had the more active community, at least for responding to videos. So I was like, okay, well there are people there, I'll make stuff for them. Before that I was into game development, and even surrounding that I was developing some tools for game developers, assets, C# libraries, etc. In 2016, a couple of years before starting this channel, I kind of discovered my love for artwork. I really went in heavy with Blender, I learned as much as I could. I was doing the weekly CG challenge hosted by Zacharias Reinhardt, who now runs CG Boost. I was watching videos by Gleb Alexandrov, I think. It's weird now kind of looking back and remembering like the learning path and then realizing that these are all people that I speak to now. There was no plan, it's just what happened. So where am I going with this? Keeping in mind everything we've spoken about, this mind of trying to be like this stable, predictable guy providing a service for people, and this chaotic creative desire which is kind of innate to me and isn't really optional. It's something that has to be explored, otherwise I will effectively be hurting myself mentally. I am not just interested in Blender. I'm interested in so many things. Too many things, to be honest. And often, when considering time investments, I do feel that angst that when I'm exploring something that is not even like digital art related, I feel bad because maybe I should be doing something digital art related instead, or be making videos about it. And over time, I've kind of been having this conversation with myself, like, should we suppress that? No, that's not healthy. There's more we can contribute to the world by exploring those kinds of things. But like, something feels like it has to change because the friction created by this dichotomy may be causing some issues. So again, I had a conversation out loud on the second channel about this, kind of saying that I feel like I should be better at sharing the other things I'm interested in, or realizing that there are ways to combine that with discussions, skill sets, etc. that the regular digital artist audience that you are will also find beneficial and interesting. Also that in this kind of mode of suppressing creative desires for the sake of making something that's structurally quite predictable for the YouTube channel, I haven't necessarily been allowing myself to inject as much personality or humor or charm into the content than I would like to. I do have a policy for life, which is there are no solutions, only compromises. And I feel like there is a compromise somewhere between all of this that's difficult to find, and I don't have the answer for it. But I feel like, again, it's something that a lot of you deal with to some degree. And it's a conversation and a subject I'm really interested in exploring more. Like, how can I effectively bridge these two worlds? I feel like getting more communicative with the community is a good idea. Doing more live streams, more discussion videos in between regular content when I feel like doing it, and just being more transparent with random experimentation and other fields of interest. Okay, so let's talk about some other things. Recently, I've been developing a tool to help me automatically edit videos. What it does is it looks for a video clip, then interprets where cut points should roughly be made. They're kind of suggestions. Then it generates an XML file that can be imported into Premiere. And what that means is you get these non-destructive cuts, which are suggestions again, but they can be modified. I spent the last like 3 days working on it up to this point. All of it works functionally, but my calculations are a bit wrong for some time conversions, because you need to consider that some videos have different frame rates to the sequence frame rate. Also, if you're going to be trimming down audio files synchronized to the video files, you need to have a way of perfectly expressing the time with that as well. I've managed to get it working like I can place stuff on the Premiere sequence perfectly, right? It understands where things need to be placed, but the actual positioning of the data for the files is still a little bit off. I was quite impressed with myself for getting this far on that project because, you know, that requires a lot of focus. There are other people people that have done similar things before, but it required me exporting many different versions of Premiere's XML format, then opening it up, interpreting what all of the data meant, figuring out which values inside the file represented what, like what kind of movement, what kind of time code, the rules for like where clips should be described. If it's the first time you're referencing a file, then you need to provide data for it, but if it's every following time you reference the file, then you don't need to do that. If the clip is preceded or followed by a transition, then you need to default some of the position values to -1. And it's like, it took a long time interpreting these files to try and develop a way to spoof them effectively. Okay, so that's like 3 days of work, but like, is that something I can talk about on this channel? I don't know. Maybe. It's not Blender related. Would it do well? Probably not. The YouTube algorithm is designed to amplify things that pre-existing subscribers find interesting. Why am I interested in doing an auto editing project? Because it takes me a long time to edit things, and the more things we can remove from the process in terms of like mental hurdles, the better. We'll feel more creative and free in just starting with the creation process. Why did I feel like I could start doing something like an auto editing project? Well, because I actually have experience with spoofing files. For example, back when I was doing some work for a robotics company, I had to translate position and angle data from a visual effects company that was coming in to the film production. But the thing is, that animation data couldn't be read by the KUKA industrial robotic arms, which are being used for motion control. The KUKA robots require a couple of files, so it was my job to find a way to take that data and automatically convert it into readable source and data files. So that job was effectively spoofing KUKA industrial files using visual effects animation data. Again, different skill sets, different interests. Is that something I can talk about? I don't know. I collect historical artifacts. Why am I doing that? Because I feel like I wanted to contribute something else to the world. I was hoping that maybe I'd be able to take some artifacts off the private art market and then donate them back to museums later in life, because I also noticed that certain types of artifacts were being, siphoned off to other parts of the world, which were a little bit sus. So this is kind of just like a side quest for me. And yeah, there is like Egyptian stuff in there and, Greek and Viking and all that. It's a little bit contentious or controversial, but the intention I feel like is good. Taking things off the private art market so they don't get lost in a Swiss vault or sent off to China, which is where a lot of the stuff is going. But again, is it too weird to do a video about that? I also noticed that I was in a position to maybe do something better with that as well. Like, as well as keeping the original intention behind the project, but also scan them in so those artifacts would be available for people to, look at, learn from in 3D space over the internet. Like there's a lot of stuff on Sketchfab from like the museums of Mariupolska, I think it is. And there are a lot of other people that have scanned in, historical things. And it was also interesting kind of combining these interests and figuring out that we could actually probably take image samples from the surfaces of these objects and then use them for semi-procedural material workflows in Blender. I've also been doing a lot of physical art recently, but it's kind of weird in the way that the intention behind the physical artwork is to express different types of value. And it's something I really want to turn into merchandise in the future, but I kind of have to wait until we move. I'm moving in a couple of weeks. But anyway, the whole point about talking about these extra things is that I believe somewhere there's a way to unify all of these interests with something more structured and predictable for YouTube. It's very difficult finding that. Maybe it would be through some kind of like compilation videos about X weird projects I've been working on or something like that. Because I feel like a lot of YouTubers, and again, something that's going to be relatable to other artists, feel scared that they're not allowed to explore certain interests because they don't have an effective way to market it for their audience. I would like to care a bit less about maintaining a formulaic structure, or rather maintaining a safe formulaic structure. I believe there is a way to combine these things more effectively. So the reason I'm putting this onto video is because I'm exercising the intent to break structure, to break formula. This is not the regular kind of video that I have allowed myself to do over like the last, several months. In fact, public service announcements like the medical videos are actually in defiance of a few rules that I established at the end of last year, where the one core policy I gave myself was provide a predictable service. Certain types of videos are allowed and other types are not. I've discovered in the process of trying to be more comfortable with the creative expression side that it's extremely beneficial mental health wise to let yourself explore that. Like an adventurer exploring untrodden lands, you will find new feelings and new things about yourself. Guidance is valuable, discovery is priceless. So, maybe you found this interesting, and I know that to a certain degree, a lot of the things we've spoken about in this video are going to resonate with a lot of other artists out there, or people kind of moving between, career and personal projects, and who also have trouble trying to find a balance. If you made it this far through the video, consider putting a hand-waving emoji. Press the Windows key and the period key if you're on Windows to bring up an emoji keyboard, and if you put that in the comments, I will be able to see which of you made it this far through the video. Continue the discussion in the comments. I do read pretty much every comment, except sometimes comment replies get missed because notifications. Anyway, if you leave a new comment, you can be guaranteed that I will see it, unless YouTube decides that it's spam, which it has been doing quite a lot recently. Don't put links in the comments because it likes to delete those. Anyway, have a fantastic day, everyone. Thank you to the patrons, and I will see you next time.